Hello. Hopefully everyone out there can hear me right now. I want to welcome everyone to our intersection of Black lives, where we are demystifying the Black student athlete and Black student experience. My name is James McCrae, and I am the Senior Associate Director for Student Engagement for the Alumni Association. And I'm here today in partnership with the Alumni Association, with the Football Alumni of Michigan, and with the University of Michigan Black Alumni Association. As a representative of the Alumni Association, I'm proud to be a part of this partnership. It is going to be a great evening, and we have some distinguished guests that I know everyone's going to enjoy. But I know you didn't come here to see me tonight, but I do have the pleasure of introducing one of our partners tonight. It's a personal pleasure for me to introduce him because it was someone that I looked up to when I was in college. So I have the pleasure of introducing Jason Cummings to you today. Jason is a business development leader in the technology consulting space. His primary responsibilities include cultivating relationships with executives, developing strategic partnerships, identifying opportunities to drive adoption of technology solutions, and implementing them in both public and private sectors. Prior to becoming a consultant, Jason enrolled in the University of Michigan School of Engineering on a full academic scholarship. He walked on to the Michigan football team, where he earned a spot on the 1997 national championship team. He earned his BSc. After earning his BSc, Jason spent his early professional life working in the media and entertainment industry, where he developed his client management skills while supporting the development of the Urban Talent Division at Los Angeles-based talent agency. Jason later earned his MBA in finance at Clark Atlanta University, and since then, he has held various client-facing roles across the financial services, manufacturing, healthcare, and technology industries. Jason has spent some time abroad as an exchange student in Greece and both Germany and Slovakia as a professional. He was selected by his firm's leadership to be an inaugural member of the Chicago United's Corporate Inclusion Institute, a program created to accelerate access and opportunity for people of color by grooming qualified, dynamic, visionary, and talented leaders of color to step into corporate directorships. Jason has always prioritized giving back since his days at Michigan, where he was an instructor for the Detroit Area Pre-College Engineering Program, or DAPSEP as we know it, a calculus tutor for the Minority Engineering Program Office, now known as the Center for Engineering and Diversity Outreach, and a drummer for the University of Michigan Gospel Chorale. As a professional, he has served Chicago Sinfonietta, YWCA Chicago, and Europe Chicago in various capacities. Please join me in welcoming Jason Cummings, the immediate past treasurer and chair of the programming committee for the Football Alumni Michigan.
Thank you so much, James. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to partner with the Alumni Association, the University of Michigan Black Alumni, as well as FAM. So what I'll do is I'll start out and just talk a little bit about what FAM is and what we do, and then I'll introduce our moderator. So in terms of FAM, FAM is a nonprofit organization that was created by former players and administrators. And our goal is to service former players, former coaches, and former administrators after their time at Michigan has been completed. So this includes creating programming that drives unity, programming that drives empowerment, and then doing activities that drive teammate assistance. So if you look, in the feed right now, you'll see some links pop up. So our teammate assistance program is something that we do where we have volunteers who provide discrete information and discrete services to our teammates in need, whether it's health, whether it's mental health, or whether it's guidance. In terms of unity, some of you may or may not have experienced our FAM virtual tailgates, where we were able to get current NFL players, former players together on Zoom calls and create engagement with the alumni community. And then in terms of empowerment, we've created a virtual series for our membership called FAM Matters. And FAM Matters takes sources the information from former players in the panelist mode, where they disseminate information that can be useful for our membership. That includes CTE, it includes estate planning, and we've also discussed some social issues as well with social and engagement. So before we move on, I'll tell you the other thing. We kind of segment our programming into emerging students. So we work with some current students. We did some work with the Tough Foundation with current players. We provide services working for mentorship with current students, as well as emerging students 0 to 5 years out. For our experienced students who are 5 to 20 years out, experienced members who are 5 to 20 years out of the program, we also have additional programming. And then for some of our established membership, we try to create platforms for engagement, such as this. So I'm looking forward to this partnership. Thank you so much to UMBA. Thank you to Sharice Still, Sharice Robinson. Thank you, University of Michigan Alumni Association, especially you, James and Ayana. And thank you to all of our panelists. So now I'll introduce our moderator. Dr. Mays played football at the University of Michigan from 1995 to 1997 and went on from being a walk-on to co-captain of the undefeated 1997 national championship team. Dr. Eric Mays is the inaugural executive director of the Arkansas Academy for Educational Equity and a research associate professor in the College of Education and Health Professions at the University of Arkansas. Prior to joining the Academy, Dr. Mays served full-time on the faculty at Johns Hopkins University, working at the nexus of leadership development, social entrepreneurship, and educational equity, designing and implementing an innovative online doctorate program in entrepreneurial leadership in education, while also serving as a defensive line coach for the Johns Hopkins football team. He went undefeated in the regular season for 2 straight years. Dr. Mays continues to serve in an affiliate faculty capacity at Johns Hopkins, teaching courses on the intersection of race, power, and policy in education. Earlier in his career, he worked on the national policy in Washington, D.C., taught in Detroit public schools, and also researched and worked in the West Africa and South America. He spent time on outreach for the University of Michigan Alumni Association, and he holds a postdoctorate degree, master's degree in educational policy and management from Harvard Graduate School of Education. Dr. Mays also has a PhD in educational psychology from Howard University, and he holds both a master's degree in educational technology and a bachelor's from the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. So I want to present to you Dr. Mays.
Jason Cummings, thank you for that introduction. Good evening, everyone. I hope you all are well. I just want to take a minute to thank Jason for that introduction, but more so for his leadership in working across these 3 organizations. His work with FAM, him connecting with UMBA, and working with the Alumni Association is not a small feat. So Jason, just want to let you know that we recognize your efforts there and appreciate those. All right, folks, now to our discussion on the intersections of the Black student and student athlete experience, which I'm pleased to say is part of the 2021 MLK Symposium programming. Our discussion tonight is part of a larger diversity dialogue. I believe there's power in dialogue, in voice, in having the space and place to bring one's lived experience and authentic self to the table. So when asked about moderating an event that would intentionally provide Black men, U of M alums, former student athletes, in this case, football players, which I'm one of, a forum, a welcome seat at the table to share their unique lived experiences as the subject of the conversation in their own voice, outside of their experiences on the football field, scoring touchdowns, or making key blocks. I was excited about the possibility of participating in the event to provide this space, to help facilitate and moderate this place, to highlight the diversity of thought and experience to the broader U of M community of possible 300,000 living alumni, or the nearly 45,000 current students enrolled in colleges and universities on campus. And it was in that vein, in that line of thought, the Football Alumni of Michigan, U-M Black Alumni, and the Alumni Association have collaborated to bring you the first of a two-part discussion with alumni, examining the African-American. And I'll go back and forth between African-American and Black during this conversation. But we'll be examining the African-American athlete experience across U of M sports. In this discussion, as you'll see tonight, former athletes will share why they chose the University of Michigan, how they created a sense of community as Black student athletes, their experiences, and I want to say unique, because I believe there is a unique experience in being an athlete, in being a Black student athlete, in particular being a Black man who was a student athlete at the University of Michigan. So they'll share those experiences on campus, beyond sports, and how they addressed and experienced racial and social justice, both as students and alum. So I'm ready to get this discussion started. And what I will do to help facilitate this discussion, I'll provide some guided questions. We'll also be provided with a few questions from some of our current U of M student leaders, all right? Which will be great for you all to see some of those folks, for all of those alumni who are out all over the planet listening in right now, or who later listen to this recording. It's nice to hear from the current students and think back to that time when we were on campus and engaged in having that Michigan experience. But before we do any of that, let me introduce you all to the men you came to hear from. So our first panelist is Mr. Thomas Seabron. He is the Senior Vice President, Sports and Entertainment Director. He is a proud graduate of Detroit Cass Tech, where he majored in architecture and design and lettered in track, basketball, and football. All right, he earned a scholarship, of course, to University of Michigan and became one of Bo's guys. After completing his undergraduate education, Thomas was drafted in the NFL. He would go on to play for multiple teams before becoming a stockbroker. He began his 39-year career at E.F. Hutton, where he became the benefactor of superior leadership, supervision, mentoring, sponsorship, role modeling, and peer support. Again, he currently the Senior Vice President and Financial Advisor with Morgan Stanley. Thomas also, as I said, has the position on sports and entertainment as the director for the Detroit area. All right, Mr. Siebra, great to have you.
Thank you, Dr. Mays. I look forward to this evening.
All right, excellent, excellent. All right, here's our resident statesman this evening, folks. All right, the next gentleman, I am proud to introduce that I had an opportunity to be on campus the same time that he was. He was a captain of a team that I played on at the University of Michigan, and that is Mr. Rod Payne. He is a former All-American center who played for Michigan from 92 to 96. During his days at Michigan, he was active in the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And when I say he was active active both in words and in action. He was selected in the 1997 NFL draft by the Cincinnati Bengals. He signed with the Ravens in 2000 and went on to win a Super Bowl 20 years ago. And I believe they're celebrating their 20th year anniversary this year. Since then, Rod Payne has founded Payne Athletic Consulting, which specializes in training athletes at both the high school and university level. He also serves as head of security at Calvary Chapel. I believe that is in the state of Florida. All right, welcome, Rod Payne, Mr. Payne.
Thank you, Dr. Mays. We have a long and great history of brotherhood together with some of these guys. It's a pleasure to see Tom Seabron, who was, I have to make a note that he was my first financial advisor coming out of school, and instrumental in a lot of guys in our positions that had opportunities to go to NFL. Some of the mentorship you mentioned before was instrumental in a lot of our financial and post-graduate decisions. So it's just a real pleasure to see some of the guys some of the men that shaped me, as much as any father figure or uncle figures or any coaches that were instrumental in our life. And I'd like to thank the Alumni Association. I'd like to thank Jason. Jason does a great job for the Football Alumni Network, and particularly Black Alumni Association. That that's why we're here, just to share that shared experience of what's going on as Black athletes, as students first, and that was one of the things we prided ourselves on in Michigan. But just to have the opportunity to come in this technology-driven age, especially a time where Zoom is everything, and be able to put this in the archives and the annals of Michigan to share our experiences. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you, Rod. Look forward to hearing more from you later. As folks will see, Rod is not at all. We'll please keep the camera on, Mr. Payne, for the rest of our discussion. Rod is not afraid to share. He was a vocal leader when we were on campus, and since then. So you hear more from him later. Dahani Jones. Dahani Jones is a former linebacker who played football at U of M from 96 to 99 and was also a member of that 97 national championship team. During his days at Michigan, Dahani pledged Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity and was a founding member of Here Earning a Destiny Through Honesty, Eagerness, and Determination of Self, also known as HEADS, a student group established in 1998 to increase unity between Black males at the University of Michigan. He was selected by the New York Giants in the 6th round of the 2000 NFL draft. Since after a long career in the NFL, Jones is now the founder of several national ventures, including Bowtie Calls, a clothing and apparel producer and distributor, VGM Creative, and Proclamation, both brand management marketing firms based in Cincinnati. He is also the chairman of a Cincinnati-based investment fund called Quay Capital Partners. Dahani wasn't able to join us this evening, but he did create a video. And James, if you'll share that video, Dahani did want to send a message to everyone.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Dahani Jones. I played on the national football team at the University of Michigan in '97, and I graduated in 2000. And since gone on to spend time in the investing world, doing a lot of media, and at the same time advising and being on the board of directors of different companies. This is an amazing partnership between the Football Alumni of Michigan and the University of Michigan Black Alumni Association, because this dialogue of being an African-American on the University of Michigan's campus during early 2000 was an experience. We were able to see different things. We were able to experience different things. And because we played the game of football, we were able to live in a very unique way. And as it relates to our time now and the things that are happening in the world, that voice and that discovery of history is an important component to how we move forward. So I ask that everybody would enjoy the conversation. I'm so sorry that I'm not able to make it, but I will be participating in future dialogues with FAM. And I look forward to hearing the responses, and I look forward to everybody having a great time. So thank you so much.
And so our next panelist, I'm proud to introduce, is Jehu Chesson. Jehu, before moving to the US at the age of 5, he immigrated from Liberia to the Ivory Coast in the wake of a civil war. He grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, and was a wide receiver for the Wolverine football team from 2012 to 2016. Jehu earned team MVP honors in 2015, which is a huge deal. at the University of Michigan. The season when he achieved the third highest receiving yards total in a game against Indiana. During his days at Michigan, Jehu was active in Athletes in Action and Alpha Kappa Alpha business fraternity. All right, he was selected by the Kansas City Chiefs in the 4th round of the 2017 NFL draft. Jehu.
Thanks, Doc. I appreciate it. Good to be here.
It's great to have you, Jehu, and you provide us. And so I'm going to ask all of the gentlemen to unmute themselves. There's a question coming up. Tom, you come to the University of Michigan in what year as a freshman?
1975.
1975. Jehu, you come to the University of Michigan at what year as a freshman?
2012.
Oh, we've got some range here, folks, which is beautiful. And so we get an opportunity to hear. And then Rod, you come to the University of Michigan, what year?
96. I'm sorry, 92.
92. Oh man, those are some. So we've got range and we've got a midpoint. And because Dahani has not been able to join us tonight, I'm actually gonna probably pull Jason in a little bit later to add to our discussion too. And so he gives us right after Rod between Jehu. And so we've got from 70, we've got the 70s to virtually 3 or 4 years ago, and that's a lot of experience, folks. So I'm looking forward to our discussion tonight. So gentlemen, thinking about that, thinking back to that freshman year, let's take it back a little before that. All right, because a lot of times people want to know why. All right, the guy, start with the why. Simon Sinek, who a lot of folks are into some of his work, but the why. People want to know why. What's your motivation? What inspires you? So if you think back to where you're from, your background, your aspirations post-college, folks, I think we'll get an insight as to more about you, understanding why you chose Michigan. So, and I'll say this from my experience, my mother's small town in Mississippi, my father's from a small town in Missouri. Nobody in my house had a college degree. They both grew up working in the fields as sharecroppers and found themselves in Michigan as they followed the harvest. And so going to Michigan, eventually coming to the University of Michigan, when nobody in my house had a degree, was transformative for me and for my household. So if you all just, and has been that since. And so as you all think back, why Michigan? And I'm going to open this up, but we're going to start with our statesman, Tom, and I guess we can just go down to Rod and then to Jehu. Why Michigan?
Well, that's a very, very loaded question. And the simple answer would be why not? But at the time when I came here, Bo Schembechler was truly a legendary coach. And he was able to point out to me that back in the 20s and 30s and 40s, it was the University of Michigan who had African-American All-Americans as late back as in the 20s and 30s and 40s. And many of the other schools I was considering in the South had not even admitted a Black player until 1969, 70, 71. And so he was able to point out something to me that was very, very important. And then I got a chance, and I'd like to thank Jason for being here this evening, but Dennis Franklin was supposed to be doing this, but Dennis had a tragic loss in his family, and I'm kind of filling in for Dennis. But more importantly, the legacy of Michigan football went so far back in terms of the African-American players that it meant so much that I ended up going here. Bo was a very big recruiter in the Detroit area. So every time I talk, I'd like to leave you with a quote that will always give you some understanding of what Michigan is. And there's a quote that says that there are a lot of famous people in this world, but what truly constitutes how great and famous a person are their gifts in their contributions to their fellow man. I'll say that again. There are a lot of famous people in this world, but what truly constitutes how great and famous a person are their gifts and their contributions to their fellow man. And one thing about all of us that spans almost 40 years, from myself to Jehu, and I know Jehu, that you could never meet a Michigan guy who didn't try to extend a branch of friendship and relationship with you, because we all understand what we went through. But I often say, sometimes the best relationships in life are those where your love for each other is greater than your need for each other. The best relationships in life is your love for each other is greater than your need for each other. I love Rod Payne. I've been knowing him since he got to Michigan. He may not need me again in life, but I love this guy, and I love Jehu and any other. I met Jason in Chicago, and he told me about playing for football. So, I think there's a bond among all former players that spans this 40 years we're talking about. And I think you can't get away from that once you've gone to the University of Michigan. And I came here with the firm understanding that there were so many great African-American players long before me who opened up the branch of friendship, and I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful for you all inviting me to be part of this, and make no bone about it. We care about each other. We may not talk to each other and see each other a lot, but we do recognize and understand that.
Excellent. Thank you, Tom. Rod.
Wow. I mean, Tom said it all in a nutshell, but I guess just sharing my personal experience coming from South Florida, and that's a loaded statement. When you hear South Florida, you think of South Beach, or you think of the fun and sun, but people don't realize that South Florida, apart from Miami Beach, was the South. Okay, it really is southern between Homestead and some of the places. Just recently in the last 40 years, we have that, so say, international flair. But for me, choosing University of Michigan was one of those things that was kind of, it was one of those God things, one of those things where, hey, the big man upstairs says, hey, I got a track for you, and it's going to be a greatness, but you don't know why, you don't know how, but here's the direction. And for me, that started with, in a weird way, Steve Everett's mom, former All-American center at Michigan, actually played my position. He played the same position. His mother was my 9th grade English teacher. And up until that point in 9th grade, and it's a telling story of the education base down in South Florida in a lot of ways, especially in a minority context. I thought that college was just one place up north, okay, because when you're in the South, it's South and North. But I thought this whole college thing that I kept hearing kids talk about in 7th or 8th grade was just one place where all white people went. Just one place, just one big college up north. And I remember sitting down talking to Miss Everett, and she was showing me pictures of Steve playing football at Michigan. It was the first time I ever saw the winged helmet, but I went on to kind of mature in a lot of ways to understand what college was, especially through football. Once people started knocking on my door and recruiting, and you realize, okay, college is expansive, universities are expansive, choices are expansive. But make that story long and short, I think that was the only school, because of that unique situation where a current student athlete's mother was my English teacher. That was the only school I'd visited north of the Mason-Dixon. All right, every other school was University of Miami, Florida State, Auburn, and Georgia. So I had a unique experience of seeing, one, growing up in the South and experiencing, so much of what we see now is, veiled or unveiled bigotry, racism, classification, all that stuff. But it was something that was just very different about not only the University of Michigan when I rolled into Ann Arbor, but in particular, the the presence of the athletes, in particular the Black athletes, the presence of some of the coaches, in particular the Black coaches, and then had a chance to go out in the social, you know, and then when you take your official visits, you have a chance to socialize. And I just remember feeling so much of a different expectation and air, almost a confidence of what the Black athlete was there for at the University of Michigan. It was something that I would never forget. And, you know, we'll talk later in context about what that meant for me, but it was just something different. When they talk about the Michigan experience, I guess at that point, it was something that you can reach out and grasp it in the air. So I was honored in that first experience to realize that it was something different. And I think we'll talk more about what those differences are, especially the way Tom Seabron, you know, expounded on it initially.
Excellent. Yeah, we'll get into that as we continue the discussion. Jehu.
Yes, sir. You know, as Mr. Seabron said, you know, it's pretty much of a loaded question as to like why Michigan. But for me, I think one of the biggest things, I look back on my journey, you know, going through Michigan to where I am today. I'm learning a lot more about myself and why I did choose Michigan, you know, on a daily basis. But I'll kind of sum it up into one story I had with a gentleman named Brett Kleitz, who was my ACT tutor my senior year getting ready, you know, or junior year getting ready to take the ACT and get a good score to be able to get into schools like Michigan, Stanford, the Northwesterns, like getting recruited by and stuff. But we were kind of going through the list of schools that were, you know, had offered me. You know, I was really blessed to receive a big list of various offers, but he told me, he kind of, you know, laid it out to me like this. He was like, you can be a small fish in a big pond, or you can be a big fish in a big pond. And then I asked him, I was like, well, why can't I be a big fish in a big pond? And he was like, you can, but you just need to know the repercussions that come with that and how you got to carry yourself to actually be able to go dominate at that level, you know, on the football field and, you know, in the classroom, you know, because Michigan was a school where you really actually had to go to class and like take care of your books and stuff like that. And athletically speaking, you know, the expectation is championships year in and year out. And, you know, the expectation was, you know, pretty large. And I just felt like within myself, you know, I wanted to make a name for myself, for my family. I kind of knew where my family had come from. And, you know, this is an opportunity to get on a big stage and, you know, let everybody know, like, you know, what the Chesson name means, and kind of make a name for myself and my father as well, as we share the same name.
That's excellent. Chesson, I'm actually going to ask you to give a little more, I want to pull a little more out of you. Can you talk a little bit about Liberia and Cote d'Ivoire? And what'd you say?
Cote d'Ivoire.
Cote d'Ivoire. Thank you, Jehu. Cote d'Ivoire. Can you talk a little bit about, took Latin and Portuguese, but the French is still, my son is taking it. It's still working on it. But from in that same vein, can you talk about those experiences, if they shaped at all, you know, your decision and what that might have meant to Michigan, to your family, you deciding on a university like the University of Michigan?
Yeah. You know, so for me, I mean, I don't remember a whole lot, you know, especially from Liberia, because, you know, we moved to Cote d'Ivoire, you know, when I was way younger. But I just know the biggest thing I'll take from, you know, my background and my heritage is, you know, culture. And we kind of always have the saying, like, it takes a village, you know, to raise a child. And so for me, it was more so like Michigan. Anytime I looked at Michigan, I was like trying to find the attributes, you know, Michigan had that my family also had, because my family, you know, I have a loving mother, a loving father, great host grandparents. You know, my dad had a host family, you know, the Branigans, who hosted him when he came to the States, and they were very supportive, and they also had the logistical means to be able to teach him about America, what it meant, what the American dream meant, what it meant to raise your family here. and all those sort of things. And so for me, I was kind of like a Venn diagram, like looking like, okay, like what does my family have in common with what Michigan has? And so when I went on my visit, that's how I would evaluate each school. And I would see, you know, do the coaches care, do the professors care? And more importantly, like, do my teammates care? Will they be able to provide me with that support that my family has provided? And, you know, are they open to culture? Are they open to diversity? Are they open to learning more about me and my heritage? And I was fortunate enough, my roommate when I first got to Michigan was Amara Darbo, who was a receiver along with me there. And he's from Sierra Leone. And so it was a no-brainer for us to go to Michigan, because when he committed, I committed shortly after, you know, him being from West Africa as well, you know, like just the foods we eat, you know, the way we dress, like all that different culture coming into play. I think that was a key component of me, you know, making my selection, because it felt familiar, and Michigan had the platform and had the, I guess, open-mindedness to accept my culture and my heritage and where I came from. And to me, it was a no-brainer to, you know, go somewhere where you feel welcomed. And I definitely felt like that when I got there.
Excellent. Excellent. Thanks for sharing that. I know you had a little more in you that you had that folks would appreciate hearing. All right. So let's take it another step. So we understand why Michigan. All right. Clearly, as Mr. Seabron said, why not Michigan? All right. So it's clear. Folks have decided. You all are all highly recruited coming out of high school, clearly had multiple offers, and you finally get to Ann Arbor in the summer. Maybe somebody got there in the spring as an early enrollee. But you get to the University of Michigan, and you are now big man on campus, all right? But not just big man on campus, you are a big Black man on campus. And so my question to you all is, what was so my question is around, you know, that match or mismatch potentially. Was there a cultural shock and or adjustments you found yourself being required to make? If so, what? And you know, give us an example of that.
I'll jump in first if nobody's saying it. You know, I would just answer it again with a quote that says, the antidote to fear is knowledge. The antidote to fear is knowledge. When all of us hit this college campus, most of us were scared as ever, because most of us had been taken out of an urban environment and thrown into an upper middle class environment and told to assimilate. So that means I'm from Detroit, and now I'm in Ann Arbor told to assimilate. But what made it easier was, obviously, we had great coaches. We have a history of former players. We had academic advisors that support you. But again, you didn't feel the way you explained until probably your senior year, because your first 2 years, you were scared to death at a big university playing football. And even if you played as a freshman or sophomore, you were put in place constantly by the coaches of what was required of you. So, you know, I believe the assimilation factor. How do you come from urban or even a suburban environment and taught to assimilate immediately? Because if you didn't assimilate immediately, you were sent back to Florida, Detroit, Chicago, or the Bahamas, or wherever you were from. So again, I would only say the antidote to fear is knowledge. And you started getting knowledge very, very fast. And by your senior year, you felt the way you just explained. You were big man on campus because you understood what you could do at that time.
Very true. Very true. In fact, it's funny, Tom. All those are anecdotes of what we experienced. For me, it was a literal culture shock in coming from where I think I had one pair of dress pants for church on Sunday and one pair of jeans. I had no winter jacket, no sweaters, no nothing. Okay. Matter of fact, I don't know if it was legal, but I think Cameron had one of the older players, like probably working, donate some ski jackets that I couldn't believe they thought they were fashionable, but it was the only thing I could wear that was warm. So coming from Florida, it was a little bit different for me in that I believe I came from a very, open culture. I mean, I went to high school where I didn't know if we had more Dominicans, Cubans, or Nicaraguans, so, and that was in between, sandwiched in between, our Jewish American crowd and the African American crowd. So, and I'm come from a Bahamian descent. So Miami was a real melting pot. But one of the unique experience I felt in coming to Michigan was not having so much culture. And actually one of the key experiences I dealt with was the first time I realized I was kind of like that Black player. Okay. And what was weird about it was the reverse situation. I remember studying with a group of kids, Caucasian kids, and kind of catching some flack for some kids from Detroit. And it was the first time I ever experienced, outside of a few situations, where, the difference I dealt with in the South, where everybody was the South, and if somebody didn't like you, they didn't like you, they told you to your face, but they were still Southern, okay? As opposed to when I came to the North, I came to Michigan, black and white communities were really, truly separate. And then there was a small section in the middle that, came together. And I remember experiencing that as a student athlete where I'd never had that before. And it kind of started a ball rolling in the school sense. But, as we got older, like Tom says, there's so many more experiences that you go through on a college campus where you understand yourself more, you understand the context that you are in as a student athlete, where in particular, I think we're going to probably touch on this more, we had a bit of an open door, okay? We had a bit of a red carpet in certain areas that a lot of Black student athletes, in particular Black males, probably wouldn't have had the open door. I can't impress upon, the listeners enough that, hey, had I just been a Black student, I can tell you my experience would be much different than it was being a Black student athlete, which is, the nature for this panel.
So Rod, will you flesh that out? Just give us an example of how that difference may have played out on campus or around campus.
I remember, there wasn't much, there weren't many, coming from Miami, we went to a party, everybody was at the party. In Michigan, the entire university was out and about, walking around, visiting campuses, going to parties, going to bars, and then you'd have a dozen or so Black parties where most of the Black student population was at those parties. And I just remember that being a bit of a thing where you really had to almost choose if you were going to be in and about the university or you were going to go to the few Black parties, and it actually panned out into some of the issues that we deal with as Black athletes and with even with who we date. People will always be like, well, hey, how come athletes date this particular or only date this? And it was never like that. It was just being, I think, the highest percentage of Black students, let alone student athletes at the university was, I don't know, 3, 4, 5% or something like that at the time we were there. So if you just went out in the community, you were either making a conscious choice to say, I'm going to hang out with this crowd, or you said, hey, I'm just going to hang out with whoever's out there. And I'll never forget a unique experience I had. I was sitting in the dorm rooms and we were hanging out with the brothers. It was me, Jared, Sean Collins, Eric Boykin. And we would always see kids walking around the campus. Well, the brothers on the team, we usually went to one guy's house or one person's room and one had a party. And I'll never forget, putting down the controller of the game, putting on my shoes and just going out. I mean, I said, I don't know where all these white kids are walking to, but I just want to walk where they're walking. And I'd never forget, I met up with some guys in my hallway, and I had that experience of realizing the entire campus was people just walking around meeting each other. And that was something that, you know, started the ball rolling, that was a little different coming from Florida, where, you know, every festival we went to, we had all kinds of people. Every neighborhood we lived in, you know, we had all kinds of people. So I think Michigan was unique in that sense from my experience coming from such a diverse community in South Florida.
Yeah. All right. Well, good. Thank you for fleshing that out for us. Jehu, I want you to hold for just a second, because we're going to bring one of our, this is where we're going to bring one of our student questions into the discussion. And I want to allow you to respond to that.
Hello, I'm Adetola Ojo, a junior studying biopsychology, cognition, and neuroscience with minors in gender and health and business. I'm the president of the Lead Scholars through the Alumni Association, as well as the programming co-chair for the Black Student Union and a representative for a college of LS&A through our central student government. I have a couple questions regarding your life as a student athlete at the University of Michigan. How did being a student athlete affect your relationships with other students or professors on campus?
Jehu.
So she said, how did your, it was kind of like a little fuzzy. How did my being a student athlete affect my
relationships with other students or faculty or staff? I'll add that, staff on campus.
Well, so for me, it's like, I mean, being a student athlete, like, it has its pros and it has its cons. And when I say that, it's based upon, like, you know, the preconceived judgments that, like, other students or other professors have of the stereotype of being a student athlete. So you kind of get grouped into, like, lumped into a group, and they'll treat you however they feel like they would treat that specific group of people. And, like, an example of that, like, you know, Michigan's a pretty proud school, you know, big time football, but also, like, it's a research institution. So professors really care about their research and, like, what they want to do, and, you know, and their agendas as well. So for me, I think, so doing pre-law at Michigan, you know, criminal justice, and then going to Ross for grad school, there are, like, I would always feel there was, like, a preconceived notion of what they would expect from me when they didn't know who I was, based upon me being a student athlete. You know, as far as, like, what you wear to class, as far as, like, you know, how you present yourself. And so for me, I think earlier in my career, I tried to be not the typical student athlete that, you know, one would think, as far as, you know, like, whenever I, like, was trying to go to class, I'd always try to be on time. I would never try to act like I was the most important person in the room, because a lot of students will treat you as such, but then there are other students who really don't give a crap about football. They just want to, you know, go to the games and, like, enjoy, have a good time, have a good experience with their friends. But then, you know, the people that treat you like kings and kind of put you on a pedestal, you really got to be humble and watch how you come off, because, you know, there are professors and students that have their own agenda at the school and really don't value football as much as you or the rest of the university may value football. So you can't, you know, you can't walk around thinking, like, you know, you got to have some humble with you, you know what I mean? So for me, that's kind of, like, something I've always tried to have with myself, and have understanding for other people at first. But it was definitely hard, you know, because some professors, you know, will work with you as far as, like, you know, your exam schedule, your class schedule, and, you know, your football schedule, as far as, like, getting what you need to get done. Because a lot of times, where I remember there are instances where, you know, like, we had a road game, and, you know, I had something due, like, that Friday or something, but I had to leave class early, and, like, some professors wouldn't let you do that, because they're like, you know, my class comes before this, you know, football activity or something. But so you would just have to be very flexible and work with them, and just kind of be upfront with them, you know, from the jump. And I think that, mixed with, like, humility and humbleness, I think really allows you to be able to, you know, breach the gap between what they think of you as a student athlete before they even get to meet you, and, like, get to see, oh, actually, this is a just a down to earth guy. You know, this is a nice guy, like just like a lot of my teammates were. But we get lumped into that student athlete category that, you know, not even just specifically Michigan. I'm talking about like across the board, you know, as far as like sports across the country. So that was tough to balance. But if you're upfront and, you know, you're humble about it, you know, the relationships can be pretty good.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Jehu. So let's take a little deeper dive. There are those that suggest, and this question is going to be open to everybody on the panel. There are those that suggest the discussion among a group of African-American men who happen to be former student athletes creates division, along with diversity programs, bias trainings, anti-racist education, and the like, all right? And as a result, they don't think that those things are necessary, all right? Because you all were treated with privilege on campus, some would suggest, or you all had the same experiences as your other non-Black, mostly white teammates, regardless of your racial background and or cultural experiences, all right, that brought you to campus. What do you say to them and to those who question the value or need for such a discussion, to hear your unique experiences? Because some would just say, just, you know, it was said to LeBron, just shut up and
yeah. At this point, Dr. Mays, I would lean to the average awareness in the room, and at certain points, you know, my grandpa had a lot of Southern saying. One of them saying, he said, "Don't argue with a fool, because from a distance you can't tell who's who." And at a certain point, we have to realize that with a lot of what's going on, there just aren't a lot of people who are exposed and or open to the idea of someone not in the context of their own culture, their own race, their own societal norms would be deserving of as much respect, consideration, and for that matter, empathy, okay, in going forward in this world. And, you know, I think we've seen that play out in our social atmosphere. I think we've seen that play out in the Me Too movement and the Black Lives Matter movement, and so many different things. And I have a unique perspective of that, being a Black male, and, you know, in the security and law enforcement, you know, arena where, you know, there's just a loaded factor with that. And I'm thankful that the University of Michigan, and this was what was unique, I think, about the Michigan experience, is that those discussions were always open. You know, I think that's part of the thing that I would say separate the people that are probably in tune to this, that are going out and being leaders in the context of their communities, as opposed to people that for the first time ever heard a perspective from an African-American athlete. And I think Michigan has gone a long way in producing those athletes that, you know, people don't even know that, hey, you know, as we sign autographs and shake hands and talk to people, and in essence, we break down a lot of barriers that through sports, which is a unique perspective as being a student athlete, a lot of those things start to war on people when they have an attitude towards somebody that they actually emulate, or somebody that their kids emulate. So I think just a natural, to sum it all up, I think just one of those things where the people who, you have to prove that this is the discussion, this is a valid point to understand different people's rights, i.e. the LGBT community, i.e. so on and so forth, that even when people put those plights against, you know, or comparing to, you know, the African-American student Black male athlete plight, people may want to compare. And I think the comparison stops in saying we just have to honor and understand that, you know, we are different people, and people have different contexts of experience.
Okay. Thank you, Rod. Mr. Siebra, or Jehu. Jason, I want to also ask you to come into the, turn your camera on so you can add to this discussion, please. Mr. Siebra.
The same subject?
Yeah, the same question. So what do you say about those who, just a quick paraphrase, to say,
Okay.
be quiet and just carry the ball. Be quiet, shut up and just dribble.
Well, you know, most athletes, rather they're at Michigan or any other college, even in the pros, and all of you guys that were fortunate to play on that 97 championship football team and all the Big Ten championships we had, you know, the quote part says, pride is at the bottom of every great mistake. Pride is at the bottom of every great mistake. Most athletes with each other put their pride down. They put down their Heisman trophies. They put down their all Big Ten. They put down first round draft pick. So therefore they can have those kind of conversations you're talking about. But this goes for the entire audience as well as the athletes. At least coming out of Michigan, I always sometimes say, happiness was born a twin. Happiness was born a twin. You know, to really be happy. I mean, when I got to Michigan as 18, I met Phil Hubbard, a basketball player, best friend in life. We talk every day to day. I can assure you, Rod Payne talks to somebody from Michigan every day, and he's 40 or 50. Jehu Chesson talks to somebody from just 4 years ago. Jason talks to somebody from just 4 years ago. Michigan gave us a lot of friendships, and those friendships are for life. They have nothing to do with black, white, indifferent. They have nothing to do with your pride, have nothing to do with being an All-American. And so I would just wrap up by saying, friendship improves our happiness, abates our misery, doubles our joy, and divides our grief. Your best friend in life is probably somebody you spent 4 years with at Michigan. And I got a son that went to Michigan, graduated, who works for Adidas now. His best friends in life are from Michigan. Most of our best friends. So there's no exception to the rule. Those 4 years in Ann Arbor are with you, rather you're Jesu's age at 23, 24, 25, 26, or my age at 60, your happiness came from those friends. And most friends and most of those athletes check their egos at the door and put their pride down because you all were together as teammates. So I would say to anybody in the audience, I would say to any of you all listening to this, happiness was born a twin. And your twin may not look like you, but they went to Michigan.
Yeah, no, I mean, just to kind of piggyback off what those other two were saying, I'll keep mine kind of short and sweet, but that's tough, right? Like, you know, somebody's telling you, hey man, like just worry about your job on the field, you know, carry the ball and, you know, just shut up and kind of thing. It's tough because they're like subconsciously asking you to like not be a part of who you are, right? Because, you know, it's hard. Like I'm Jehu the football player, but I'm also like, you know, Jehu the businessman, but also Jehu the student, you know, so you can't just pick and choose what you want. You got to have like all of me or none of me kind of thing. So if you give me a platform and I want to speak on something, I'm going to speak about what I'm passionate about. And something I knew that, you know, Michigan kind of really helped me with, you know, when I joined Alpha Kappa Psi, it was a professional business fraternity that allowed you to be able to speak eloquently and speak on something that you're passionate about, but also when you have a platform, what to say when you're on that platform. And that's kind of why I joined that fraternity. But when you're asking a player to just shut up and carry the football and, you know, shut up and make plays, it's tough because you can't turn around and ask him to stand up for whatever social justice cause he wants to stand up for, or you want him to stand up for. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword because I found myself in a lot of different positions where there were topics that I was passionate about and I wanted to speak about, but I had to educate myself first before I spoke out on, because if I didn't do that, that would encourage those types of people that would say that kind of comment, hey, shut up and play. It's probably because, you know, you have guys, you know, just having emotional responses to various topics that they really don't know what they're talking about. And other people are highly educated or think they are in whatever space that you have thousands of followers on whatever social media platform that you have, but if you have no legit concrete, you know, thoughts or, you know, educational, thoughtful thoughts to add to the conversation, that's kind of where that comes from. So shame on them for, you know, kind of putting you down and, you know, trying to say, shut up, you know, just carry the ball. But at the same time though, like I'm playing devil's advocate, like there's a reason, and you know, like people say stuff like that because as we all know, some athletes can get a little bit like, you know, just kind of go off the deep end with whatever they're talking about, and it just doesn't make any sense. So, but I just want to throw that in before Jason hops in.
Jason.
Thanks, Doc Mays. Thanks for bringing me back. So, you know, when I think about what you mentioned, a couple of things come to mind. The first thing is, I think that people, you know, sometimes don't have an understanding of what exactly, you know, inclusion is, and, you know, the purpose of it, you know. So there, to me, there's a couple of things. One is the education, and getting an understanding and getting an opportunity to know things beyond your norm. And then the other thing is just kind of understanding, you know, what the purpose is. And I think the purpose of having these discussions is to provide a lens into, you know, in a safe way, a lens into a perspective that a lot of people may not have. And when you think about inclusion, you know, for me, you know, even going back to Michigan, you know, I got an academic scholarship. You know, I was on full tuition for academics, but however, you know, the scholarship that I received was in the name of Dr. King. So it was a Martin Luther King scholarship. So, you know, even with my academics, you know, there's an opportunity for me, you know, to kind of level the playing field. And I think that's what everybody asks for, is that opportunity for equity, so that you can have that opportunity to take advantage of and, you know, things that, you know, other people may also receive. So, and then, you know, to speak to what Jehu said earlier, you know, on the flip side of being a student athlete, you know, we come from various backgrounds. Some people, you know, have, you know, academic levels and scholarships. You know, some people were much, you know, far better football players than myself, and they earned that as well. So everybody you look at, you know, that's on the football team, they've earned their way into the university by leveraging whatever skills they had. And I think that's something that everybody needs to recognize. However, after we do become student athletes, you know, one of the things, you know, I'm speaking about corporate America, you know, as we go on, as we leave, you know, the university, you know, for Rod, I'm looking at you now, you're still a big Black man, you know, whether you're, you know, in the grocery store, you know, wherever you go. I'm not as in good a shape, but, you know, people have an idea, and they know if you play, if you're an athlete. So what I'm saying is, you know, you're constantly dealing with some stigmas associated with that. And it's easy for people to, even in corporate America, put you in a certain box. And I think that one of the things that I've learned to do through Corporate Inclusion Institute is to try to tap into the gift that we've been given, and, you know, help other people understand that having equity and having inclusion is an asset for everyone. So, you know, that's where I'll leave that. But I think that, you know, providing platforms like this is an asset for everyone, you know, because, you know, everyone isn't comfortable having a conversation like this face to face, but creating this type of forum gives people the opportunity to get insight without necessarily, you know, having to engage directly.
Yeah, I appreciate all those perspectives. I'll go back to Mr. Seabron. I guess we couldn't have a discussion as a part of the MLK Symposium without a little preaching. So, you know, I hear you. I want to say, so in one sense, I think that folks are being told clearly, shut up and dribble, just be quiet. But I think athletes are then also questioned to another degree. And so I want to bring in a student question. And so how do you just, how do you balance those two? And so Jay, you brought up a point, you know, you may not be as informed on a particular topic because you spend, you know, X amount of hours a day doing this, X amount of hours a day doing this, and somebody else may spend 12 hours doing that, which they speak out and discuss. So my question, the question will come from James. It'll come from our second student leader of the night. And I want you all to think about that, you know, in contrast to the question that you were just asked around shut up and dribble.
What's up, you all? Thank you for being here. My name is Thomas Vance. I'm a senior, and I'm the speaker of the Black Student Union, as well as a member of the Students of Color Liberation Front. I kind of wanted to ask a question related to racial injustice and activism. I feel like oftentimes in BSU spaces, the group of students that I like very noticeably see are missing from those spaces are student athletes. And I was wondering if you could provide maybe some context or background as to why you you may have or you may not have come to BSU meetings or events, especially when things are popping off on campus and a lot of the members of the community may have been organizing for next steps and for activism. Thank you.
That's open to the entire panel.
I think first, just to throw that in context, I think speaking for our class of 96, had a number of the social injustices and things that we are dealing with now in 2000, 2000 from, basically 2016 on. Yeah, I'm confident that our students would have been in the forefront. Looking back at some of the things that we dealt with as student athletes back then, a lot of issues weren't as to the forefront of having this of in our face the way we are now. I've been very pleased at the mobilization of the Black athlete, in particular, the professional Black athlete in the last couple of years, where years prior to that, having been off the field, I was really motivated, to do some things. And I did it as a coach and from my perspective of dealing with young athletes now. But I think it's just one of those things where, in this current environment, I think the student athlete has a unique perspective of being, one, an example of whatever it is they're doing. I mean, the student athlete has a platform to show whatever example he wants to show. If we're unique in the sense that if 5 student athletes want to get up and start a movement, some reporter's going to report on it. Someone's going to report on it. However, the student athlete is still inundated with that one thing that people don't always realize, how much of our world is committed to athletics. So in order to keep that edge, it would be like asking a Navy SEAL to break away from that level of training, that level of preparation, that level of thought process to now consider social situations. And I think that's one of the struggles as a student athlete, to be inundated with such a intensive activity and commitment to something, while keeping that other side open to say, hey, you know what? When I'm done with my war, when I set my rifle down and walk back into, society every other week or from time to time with my classes, I also should have or possibly have an opinion on what's going on. I just think it's it's one of those unique positions as a student athlete to know when to fight and what to fight for.
Thank you, Rod. Others?
I'd hop in real quick. I'd say, I liked his question, what he was asking, because I know I myself, I've been asked to be a part of certain things that, I've respectfully like turned down. And the reasoning is, it's like, what do you subscribe to, right? Like on a public and a private level, because if whatever activist group or social movement that's being broadcasted, I first want to always educate myself and try to find a position as far as what do I believe on the subject at hand, and if it's incongruent with what the group believes. If those things are synonymous, then I can subscribe to that group. But a lot of the times, students or people who question, why is there a lack of support from other Black student athletes or other, put in whatever demographics, supporting whatever group you want to, you want to represent. It's because they don't necessarily think about the consequence of what your voice means to that group based upon how it could be perceived. And what I mean by that is there's a cost to subscribing to a group, right? Because if you say yes to something, this one thing, you're whatever you're subscribing to that group, you're saying no to these other things and whatever other groups that may be opposing that group or maybe opposing its views. And you may not necessarily feel like that. And so you don't necessarily want to put yourself in position where one, you're not informed on what exactly the group is doing. And then two, you're just not knowledgeable enough to take a stance because you don't know what that could get you into. And there have been examples of that. I mean, I've had teammates that have subscribed to things, social justice movements and stuff like that, and it wasn't exactly what they thought it was going to be. And they kind of just started being used as a puppet, but then they started saying things they never really even meant to say. And it got kind of tricky because then now it's affecting their personal life, it's affecting their playing life, and it's kind of unraveling very fast from underneath them. And so that's where I feel like, to answer that guy's question, like I'm always thinking of like the consequences of me subscribing to a group and the effect that it could have on me and my family, because all of a sudden, you're getting questions from all over the place from other people and people that are, close to you. Well, why is Jehu doing this? Or why is Jehu doing that? Like, it's just more of the standpoint of like, okay, I'm always going to be myself and I'm always going to get behind something I believe in. And I'll never sacrifice, my morals, my vision for embarrassment of being wrong or being opposed. But I will make sure my morals, my belief system is incongruent with that group's before I sacrifice my time and, whatever potential gains I could have by not being in the group for those things. And I think that's the biggest reason why I know with my generation, like, you don't necessarily see a lot of guys like, running up for, yeah, I'll be part of that group, because it's like sometimes that group isn't really what that group is saying they are, and so you just really got to know the causative factors as to what they're subscribing to and versus, what you're trying to get done.
And he said the right thing with that generation, because what he's talking about, Eric, Jason, Tom, for sure, this new generation of social media, we've long since had our private conversations and our time where we get together, and we thank God that, we are not a part of this current generation that's so inundated and propped up with the positions of social media. So that's completely unique in a sense of being, we're still trying to handle it as grown adults and fathers and husbands, let alone being a 21-year-old freshman or sophomore and having those same passions. When I think about some of the positions I had in college and some of the arguments and debates I had, in the ugly or outside of Pizza Bob's, with some random deal or something like that, to think that would be on social media now and the ramifications of it, I think that's a unique position that only guys in JU's class and now are dealing with.
Yeah. Rod, that's a great point. I just wanted to say something because when that question, so Doc Mays and I, when we saw this question, we knew it would, spark some good responses. And I got a couple of, people sending me messages and everybody's saying the same thing. Rod hit on a lot of things. So if you think about student athletes, especially football, Michigan Stadium right now, over 100,000 people there. So you're in that stadium with eyes on you, television, whether you're on the field or not. You wear your Johnny Grays, your equipment around campus. Everybody kind of knows who you are. So, for me, I didn't play a lot. It's still a level of risk management, that I have to undertake. With everything I do, not just because I'm an athlete, because there's certain guys in football. Like Jehu said, they may make decisions and you have to think even then. So I think that Rod made a good point. It's like when do you fight something and where do you fight something? But more importantly, how?
Jason, thanks for jumping in there, because I think you did a great job of bridging those discussion points. I will add that an important point to be considered is risk. And you mentioned it, Jason. The risk and the power dynamics are different. And so let's say that a student who is on an academic scholarship at X university, his power dynamics with the deans or his professors are drastically different from the power dynamics of a student athlete who is the first in his family to go to college, who's there on scholarship, and his coaches may see him being involved with anything controversial as a distraction. And so those power dynamics those are different power dynamics. And so not to risk it. I'm not saying not to risk. I'm not saying not to get involved, but I think it's important that we understand how that question becomes a little more complex. And so those variables involved in that decision-making process are a little bit different, because the risks are not the same. And I think this is why it's important that we dive into these differences, i.e. between a student athlete and a student at the University of Michigan, because often student athletes are in very vulnerable positions.
Yeah, it's also been my experience that the student athlete's experience, whether Black or white or male or female, is not void of social issues or issues dealing with things. In fact, it takes on a little bit more exposure to things from a perspective of every athlete, in a sense, is a minority and goes through that minority experience compared to the regular student athlete. The first time a student goes home and we go to practice, we hear it in the discussions all the time. They just have no clue. And when you speak to them and they say certain things, well, hey, why don't you guys just come over? Why don't you do this, or why don't you do that? And they don't realize, we're practicing 20 hours a week, pretty much with the exception of 2 or 3 weeks a year round. There becomes that just total different existence of the student athlete that I think is pretty much like a minority, where people don't understand it.
That's excellent. So we've got a different level of risk, and we've got a different level of involvement of other things on campus where people may not know the demands. I think the challenge, and which makes it even more unique, is when student athletes on campus do get involved with the movements for social, racial justice and equity, because people may not necessarily know the risk that's involved at simply showing up, and the time commitment that's involved at simply showing up and standing in solidarity. But I think also the student athlete needs to know how important that is for their success outside of the court or the field. And so, folks, we have had a lively discussion. We are at, we've got about 9 to 8 more minutes. And so I want to provide each one of our panelists an opportunity to look at their 18 to 19 to 20-year-old self. And this is for any of those young people who are listening to this call, any of those student athletes, any of those students, or any young people aspiring to be college, any current college students or high school students aspiring to be college students. We want you to give them a message looking back. What would you say based on what you know now to yourself and to those listening who might have been in that same position as your 18, 17, 19, 20-year-old self?
There were 2 points that I took. One came from our coaches, and I believe them wholeheartedly. They said, and every player on here is reminiscent of this, make every day count, because it will be over before you know it. Right? That was one thing that Moeller emphasized with us, and I was very thankful that my 18-year-old self considered that. The other thing I would tell that 18, 19-year-old self is to really, make the most of all of the relationships and all the exposure you can, because it's going to come back around that same exposure and education is going to be the hallmark of, you know, your relationships and the people you affect. I think student athletes lead in two different ways. One way we lead out in the open where everybody sees what we do, but the other thing is the skills and the things we acquire through the exposure of what we do. When we get where we're going, we're usually at the top of the pile and people are usually following.
Excellent. Thank you,
I'll
Rod.
leave two things like Rod. Great remarks, Rod. A friend of mine gave me a great plaque once. I hang it in my office, and it says, "The meaning of life is to find your gift. The purpose of life is to give it away." The meaning of life is to find your gift. The purpose of life is to give it away. And if it's one thing I would add to this audience that's here today, you know, there's a quote that says a lot of things, but coincidences are God's way of remaining anonymous. Coincidences are God's way of remaining anonymous. You know, Dennis Franklin couldn't make this session today because of a casualty in his family. And yet, you know, I was asked to come in from Jason. I met Jason in Chicago at a football game. He said, "Hey, I played at Michigan, blah, blah, blah." We got to be friends and talking about his career. I met Jehu Chesson as a senior, junior at Michigan. I've known Rod and Eric. Do you believe in Celestine prophecy? You believe it's that we all just got here on our own? One thing I can tell the young people in that audience, the coincidences in your lives are for a reason. You don't just meet people for no reason. You don't just touch the lives of other people for no reason. Those are all God's way of touching you. And so I'm humbled, thankful to be on this call. I probably know you, Eric, the least, but I know the rest of these guys. And I don't believe we were just bought together today on whatever today's date is. It's just another reminder of the goodness and the greatness of God that we continue to fellowship with each other. So to the young people, I'm saying, everybody you meet is a relationship, and you never know when you're going to come back across them again.
Excellent. Jehu.
Yeah, no, so I'll kind of go with the theme of two things. One, I want to give a book recommendation that I wish I had read when I was like 19 or 20. It's a book called Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. I don't know if somebody can type that in the group chat, but it's Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. That is a must read. I wish I read that book 19 or 20. I'm still pretty young, but I guess, so if y'all, you know, you hear me, no matter what age you're at, really, like, read that book. It's worth it. It's Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. And then the second thing I would say is something that, you know, has been ingrained in me, you know, with my football background, but also I've been taking it off the field, is the idea of like, and it fits in with the theme of what we're doing now with, like, you know, social justice and, you know, all these different movements going on, is like, know what the default is. And when I say that, like, know what you're willing to tolerate as far as things happening in your world and things happening outside your world. Because there's a quote I really like. It goes like this, it's on toleration, but you'll never become who you could be until you become angry with what you are. Your life is defined by what you hate. Whatever you don't hate, you allow, and whatever you allow, you will never change. And so to me, I feel like that's very powerful, because we all kind of go through life and we never really change. We always think like, oh, what do you do to be great, right? Like, it's always a small thing that adds up into a bigger thing. And it's really what you say no to that defines what you are. Because if you are against racism, sexism, all those different things, and if you see it and you allow it, then are you really against it? Because I believe you don't necessarily despise that action enough when you see it to do something about it. It may not be confronting it head on right then and there, but it's at least doing something to thwart whatever behavior that you don't want to see in your world or the world around you.
All right. Excellent. So we're actually going to go over by a couple of minutes, because I want to make sure that I have a chance to bring somebody to close out our meeting, and I'd like to give her the proper introduction that's
Sure.
deserved. So I want to say this, Jay, and I want to make sure that I give two. All right. And those two come from, we'll probably only go about 5 minutes over, folks. And so, you got to move with it. All right. We're going to work with it. We appreciate everybody's time and respect everybody's time. Two things that I would say. One, and so that they're reciprocals. And this was a conversation that I saw Cornel West, who also is an alum of one of my other alma maters in Cambridge. And he was having an issue with, at that time, he was a professor, and there was a president of the university, so they're all Harvard alums. And he was doing an interview, and they were like, well, Cornel, what the heck are you doing making rap tapes anyway? Because I assume that Summers seemed to have a problem with Cornel West making some rap music. And Cornel, he said, you can't do that at his Harvard. But they both were Harvard alums. And see, Cornel said, listen, and this is my message to young people, I have a responsibility to let the best of that university shape me. And so as you think about a college, as you think about a university, a responsibility to let the best of it shape me. Follow, as Rod, his example of putting on his shoes and going to see where the rest of those students were going. All right. That's an example of getting out, being curious, letting the best of that place make you and chisel you into the best possible version of yourself that you can be. At the same time, you have a responsibility to shape that university and that place with the best of you. And so that's the message that I want to make sure that the young people that are listening, it's a reciprocal relationship. As the man needs, as they need the dough and work out the kinks in the dough also works out the kinks in him. So always remember that it is a reciprocal relationship. And so I want to thank the Alumni Association. I want to thank FAM. I want to thank UMBA. I want to thank our panelists for a great discussion. I want to thank Jason for facilitating, our tech people who are behind the scenes. The video that we intended to play for Dahani will be included in the recording. That took a lot of people to make this happen, and we appreciate your time. There were a lot of places you could have been tonight, virtually, anywhere in the world, but you all chose to be here with us for this discussion. And it says a lot about you and your commitment to the topic, this discussion, and to this university, which we all share and hold near and dear. And so I will turn it over and close it out, my portion, by introducing someone who has worked behind the scenes to help make this event happen. And we'll also let you know a couple things to look out for, all right? So it has been my pleasure to moderate this event. And so the chair of the UMBA, who will close us out with a few housekeeping items, has been a volunteer and a UMBA board member for several years before taking on the role of chair or president of the organization. She owns and operates a fee-based financial planning business in Metro Detroit. She's a proud mother of 2 teens. She has been a true blue Wolverine, she says, since she paid off her student loans. And God bless you. She'd like to give a shout out to her family. I believe they are celebrating a reunion, and I will let you mention that. Miss Cherie Steele, please go ahead and, as they say, close us out.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you to the panelists. I know some of those questions couldn't have been easy to get through, but you're all professional, and I think that anything we didn't pick up tonight, we can pick back up on part 2. So as Eric mentioned, I'm the chair of the University of Michigan Black Alumni. I serve with nearly 20 alumni throughout the country as board members and leaders of UMBA. 2021 marks our 45th anniversary, and we were founded as the reunion of Black graduates in 1976. Our goal is to be the forever home of Black Wolverines. So UMBA is self-funded and self-governing. And in recognition of our anniversary, we'll be raising money for our general fund and some new alumni initiatives. A little bit inspired by Jason Cummings and the football alumni of Michigan and their hardship fund, extending beyond scholarships to meet people where they are. And so we want to echo some of those initiatives in UMBA. So we plan to raise at least $500,000 by our 50th anniversary in 2026. And our listserv is over 10,000 Black alumni strong. So if we donate $45 or more each or less, it could be as little as you can afford or as much as you can dream of. We'd appreciate that to get to our $500,000 goal by our 50th. So how to become involved in the UMBA? Join one of our standing committees. Our board is a working board. So everyone who steps up, they're either volunteered or voluntold to do something. So I have committee chairs in marketing, homecoming, student engagement, membership, and alumni activities. Additionally, since we are a national organization, you will see UMBA Detroit, Chicago, Atlanta, Charlotte, New York, DMV, Houston, and Los Angeles. So we have city ambassador leads in all of those places, sometimes co-leads that are really to engage people in their homes, in their cities, and to bring about that community right where you are. Our website is currently going through a redesign. Thank you to Narissa Marbury, our marketing chairwoman. She's our director, and she's going to keep us current and our initiatives up to date. So please, in the meantime, join us at UMBA Go Blue on our social media pages, the Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And finally, we'll be returning with Eric. So Dr. Mays will be our moderator for panel 2 on February the 18th. He'll be joined by some new talent that Jason was able to secure. So I can't thank Jason enough and FAM enough in the Alumni Association in this partnership. So we'll be joined by Tom Goss, he's the former athletic director, Ashley Jones, who is the captain of Michigan women's basketball team, Jimmy King from the men's basketball team, and Doris Simmons from track and field. And we'll have a similar format, including the community and student leaders. And we just appreciate your time. And again, thank you to the panelists for your honesty, for your commitment to our university. And thank you all, and go Blue.